No one was allowed to leave. Not until she was found. The night air in the forest was thick, heavy with fear, as Damien Blackwood's voice tore through the darkness like a warning shot. Men ran in every direction, flashlights slicing through trees, boots crushing leaves, while somewhere between the shadows a young woman in a torn red dress fought to stay silent, her heart beating so loudly it felt like the forest itself could hear it. Blood stained Damien's arm, his jaw clenched with fury. Not just because she had escaped, but because the girl who ran from him was never supposed to matter. She was meant to be leverage, a name, a weapon in a long-running war. Evelyn Hayes didn't know it yet, but in that moment, her life had already been claimed by a man ruled by revenge and a past soaked in betrayal. This is not a simple kidnapping story, and it's not a love story born from softness or chance. It's the collision of two broken legacies, one built on power, pride, and rage, the other on innocence, courage, and truth. A ruthless heir haunted by his father's death. A young woman dragged into a feud she never chose, as enemies close in and secrets clawed their way to the surface. Lines between captor and protector begin to blur, and the question becomes impossible to ignore. When hatred is all a man has ever known, what happens when the person he's supposed to destroy becomes the one thing keeping him human? The forest swallowed Evelyn whole as she ran, branches tearing at her skin, her red dress snagging on thorns like the night itself was trying to hold her back. Every breath burned her lungs, but fear pushed her forward. Behind her, Damien Blackwood's voice thundered through the trees, sharp with fury and command. No one was leaving until she was found. He wasn't chasing a woman. He was hunting a symbol of betrayal. Evelyn had never imagined her life could collapse in a single night. One moment she was attending a family gathering. The next she was running for her life from a man whose eyes held nothing but rage. When she slipped, glass shattered beneath her hand. Pain exploded as she slashed wildly, just trying to escape. She didn't know she'd wounded him. Didn't know that single cut would seal her fate. Damien found her minutes later, pinning her to a tree, blood soaking his arm. His grip ironed. His voice was calm, mocking, terrifying. She threatened to scream. He stepped closer instead. In that moment, Evelyn realized something far worse than fear. This man wasn't just angry. He was broken, and she had stumbled straight into the center of his war. The drive away from the forest felt longer than it was. Silence suffocating the air inside the car. Evelyn stared out the window, memorizing the road, searching for any chance to escape. Damien never looked at her. His hands gripped the steering wheel like he was holding himself together by force alone. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled, demanding to know where he was taking her. His answer was cold and final: home, not hers. His. And with those words, something inside her dropped. When she mentioned her father, Damien slammed the brakes, rage exploding after years of restraint. He accused Victor Hayes of betrayal, of stealing land, of destroying his family. Evelyn was stunned. None of it made sense. Her father had never spoken of the Blackwoods, but Damien didn't care about her confusion. To him, she wasn't a person, she was leverage. When they arrived at the estate, towering gates closed behind them like a prison. Inside waited Grandma Eleanor, whose shock mirrored Evelyn's terror. Damien declared Evelyn a hostage, collateral for a debt unpaid. Locked inside a grand bedroom that felt colder than any cell, Evelyn finally broke down. The mansion wasn't just walls and wealth. It was a monument to hatred, and she was trapped at its center. Morning brought no comfort. The house watched her in silence as servants avoided her eyes. Serena Voss, Damien's fiancée, made sure Evelyn felt unwelcome at every step, reminding her she was nothing but a prisoner dressed in borrowed dignity. At breakfast, Damien shut Serena down with a single command, asserting control, but offering no mercy to Evelyn. Every word he spoke reinforced her powerlessness, yet cracks began to form. When Evelyn cut her hand and Damien treated the wound himself, his touch was careful, almost gently. It confused her more than his cruelty ever had. That confusion turned to fear when Caleb appeared in the garden, his smile oily, his intentions clear. When he reached for her, Damien intervened with explosive violence, drawing a line no one could miss. Touch her, and you're done. Later, on the rooftop, Damien finally revealed the truth as he saw it. His father's land stolen, his family ruined, his father dying of heartbreak. Evelyn listened, devastated. She had never known her comfort might have been built on someone else's loss. For the first time, she didn't see a monster. She saw a man consumed by grief, holding on to revenge because it was the only thing keeping him standing. The night attack came without warning. Gunfire shattered the quiet as Damien ran out alone, refusing to hide. Evelyn watched from the window, helpless as he fought men who wanted him dead. When one crept up behind him, instinct overpowered fear. She screamed his name. That scream saved his life. Bloodied and exhausted, Damien collapsed back inside, and Evelyn pushed past Serena without hesitation, pressing cloth to his wound, her hands shaking. In that moment, something shifted. She wasn't his prisoner anymore. She was the reason he was alive. Grandma Eleanor saw it too. The way Evelyn risked herself, the way Damien's eyes softened when he looked at her. But Serena saw something else. Jealousy twisted into desperation. She conspired with Caleb, planning to remove Evelyn permanently. That night in the kitchen, Evelyn fought back, knocking over pots, refusing to surrender. Damien arrived just in time, fury unleashed. Caleb's betrayal was exposed. Serena's lies unraveled in front of everyone. Damien ended the engagement, choosing honor over pride. Silence followed, but the cost of revenge was finally undeniable. With the house cleansed of betrayal, Damien faced the truth he'd avoided. Evelyn had paid for his hatred. He went to her with remorse instead of commands, releasing her from captivity and promising to take her home. The words should have filled her with relief. Instead, they hurt. The drive back was quiet, heavy with things neither dared to say. Damien admitted his war was over, not because he'd won, but because he'd nearly lost himself. Evelyn surprised him by confessing she didn't want to leave, that she saw the man behind the rage. Damien refused to accept her feelings. Believing love born from pain couldn't be fair. At her home, Victor Hayes rushed forward, ready to fight, until Evelyn stopped him. She defended Damien, revealing the truth. Damien returned the land deeds, ending the feud with humility. Victor admitted his wrongdoing. Forgiveness replaced decades of hatred. As Damien turned away, Evelyn's eyes promised something unspoken. This wasn't goodbye. It was restraint. And restraint, Damien realized, was the bravest thing he'd ever done. 3 months later, spring bloomed, where bitterness once lived. The Blackwood and Hayes families stood united beneath wedding decorations that shimmered with hope. Evelyn wore red again, not torn, not trembling, but radiant. Grandma Eleanor held her hands, calling a family without hesitation. When Damien entered, the room stilled. His eyes found Evelyn, and everything else faded. This was the woman who had shattered his vengeance and rebuilt him piece by piece. Their union wasn't just marriage, it was peace. Damien gifted her a locket with his father's picture, choosing love over legacy soaked in blood. Evelyn promised to honor his father's memory with kindness. As vows were spoken, enemies became relatives, wounds became scars, and scars became proof of survival. This wasn't a fairy tale. It was earned. Pain had carved their love into something unbreakable. And as moonlight poured through the windows that night, Damien held Evelyn close, whispering vows meant for eternity. From hatred's ashes, love rose stronger, quieter, and finally free. The storm had passed, leaving silence in its wake. Damien sat alone for a moment, hands trembling. Not from anger, but from the weight he had carried for years. Every feud, every betrayal, every act of vengeance had led him here, to the fragile peace that now rested beside him in the form of Evelyn's soft breathing. She had survived. She had forgiven, and she had shown him a side of life he had long forgotten. Hope. Slowly, he reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers, feeling warmth where there had only been rage. Outside, the world continued, unaware of the battles fought in mansions and forests. But inside, hearts mended, and trust was reborn. Evelyn stirred, her eyes opening to meet his. And in that gaze, Damien saw everything he had ever wanted and ever feared love. Fragile, yet unshakable. He whispered her name, not as a captor, not as an avenger, but as a man who had learned how to forgive, to protect, and finally, to feel. She smiled softly, the red of her dress no longer a warning, but a celebration of survival, courage, and choice. In that Damia knew the war was over, not because enemies had fallen, but because love had risen from the ashes. And in that truth, they both found freedom.